right, well, hello everyone. Welcome to episode, I guess, 3 now of the Co-Space podcast. So we're back here recording another episode on this beautiful evening. And if you guys notice, I got no glasses. So I got LASIK last week on Wednesday.
Let's go.
Which is great. Feeling good about it. Still have a little bit of dry eye, but feeling really good about it. I think it's definitely worth it. You know, if there's anyone out there that is wearing glasses or contacts and is debating LASIK, and not everyone has an issue with contacts like I did, but if, you know, there are people out there, I definitely recommend to do it because if you do the math, and I was kind of doing this too, but, you know, I'm 23, so by the time you need glasses again, I was told you'll probably be like 45, 50, because then you need kind of like reading glasses and stuff. So not all the time, but for some activities. And, you know, let's say you go 20, 25 years spending money on glasses, contacts, and then having to just deal with them, right? I mean, you're basically spending about the 4.5K or $5,000 that, you know, you spend on LASIK. So I think it's definitely worth it. I mean, painless. I know people watch TikToks about it and like videos, and you see what they're doing, and they're like cutting a flap and they're like moving it around and stuff. So it can kind of make you squirmy. And so I didn't watch any of that going into it. I didn't want to. But I didn't want to freak myself out. But yeah, so definitely recommend it. Completely painless. Recovery was also painless. Just dry eye. You know, you just got to rest your eyes a lot. So you're kind of out for the count a little bit for at least, you know, the first 2 days completely. But yeah, I mean, definitely. So if anyone's considering doing LASIK, I recommend it. I'm seeing perfectly. No real issues besides that fuzziness issue I was mentioning to you with the lights at nighttime. But that seems to be completely normal, and I'm hoping it'll go away within a few months.
That's awesome. Yeah, life updates. So as far as me going, started my full-time job with NobleMed. We're a startup in Oklahoma City. We basically manage the biomedical engineering department at the community hospitals, part of an Integris network. So on a daily basis, the things that I'm doing are asset management, maintaining equipment, some logistics, a little bit of administration. Being part of a startup, I have to wear many hats. I have to fulfill many roles, and I also have to make sure the hospitals are running as well. So there's a lot on the business side. There's a lot on the hospital side that I'm doing every single day, and it's been a good experience so far. I am learning a lot. I'm also trying to document a lot of this stuff and share it with everybody and raise awareness about biomedical engineering. So that's another project I've got going on. And I think overall, a lot of room for growth in that area. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome stuff you're doing with NobleMed. So one of the things I think I wanted to talk about with you is because you've tried helping me out with this part of, I guess, my personality is ego, right? Is having an ego and what that means. Because I think a lot of people probably struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I think in what we're both doing, even what we're doing together, having an ego is very important. And you know, you've let me know with the content creation how important it is on that side, but also, you know, you just mentioned NobleMed, how it's a startup, and I feel like ego can play a big role in that sort of environment. So, what is, I guess, your perspective on ego, and how do you approach, how do you build that up?
That's a good question. So I basically have a 3-part Venn diagram, and each circle represents ego, confidence, and narcissism. And because I see a lot of guys at the gym, they're confident, but they don't have quite enough ego to pull out a camera and start recording themselves, doing exercises, filming themselves in front of other people.
Right.
And then there's the guys that have so much ego that they're narcissistic, and they don't care if they're getting in your way. They don't care, you know, who's around. They want people to see them.
The ones that are, you know, the ones that are extra loud as well, you know, lifting the weights, so like, you know, sorry about that, but it's like just like ridiculous breathing.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you know, in my, you know, almost a decade of being at the gym, I've never had to yell out that loud. So maybe I'm not lifting hard enough, but I also feel some of it is extra.
So finding, as a content creator, you need to find that line. You need to develop some type of ego because you're recording yourself. You are going to be seeing your face. You're going to be seeing your body and your weird, I always think like, yeah, why do I look so weird right now? But if you have developed some type of ego, it helps you just go ahead and push past that, post the content anyway. And that's, in my opinion, something that requires a little bit more than just confidence.
I agree. Yes, it does. And I think in today's world especially, right, we get taught all about. There's some truth to it, right? But when you go to an office job, especially, or you go to, honestly, you go to any job, right? There's like a chain of command, right? And you understand the people that are above you, the people that are below you, and I'm only using like work as an example because all of us have to work in some regard, right? In some sort of fashion, and I think this holds true for whether you're a waiter or you're in an office job. But we all recognize that sort of chain of command, and a lot of times I feel like what a lot of people end up growing up with is like parents who really consider any sort of backtalk or any sort of opinion, that kind of go a little bit overboard as disrespectful, right? And then they kind of silence their kids. Mm-hmm. And when you grow up in that environment, which I personally haven't, but I know other people who have, I feel like that really hurts your ego. I feel like that can really, and it affects people in different ways, but one of the ways is that it can hurt your ego, it can hurt your confidence. You don't want to speak up, you don't want to be the person in the room to where even if you know the right answer, you don't say anything because you are maybe there's that little voice in your head saying, well, what if I'm wrong? Or what if that's not the answer they're looking for? Mm-hmm. Or what if I'm not supposed to speak up in that moment? What if they're waiting for someone else to, or they're looking for a specific person to say something? And, I think, fuck that. You need to have an ego because the more I've learned, and I didn't grow up in that environment, but I also don't have an ego. I feel like I'm trying to develop it, but there is some truth to not downplaying yourself. If you know your worth and you know your value and you know what you bring to the table, as long as you know your place as well and you're not overreaching when it comes to authority, for example, like speak up, say something, be active in whatever meeting you're in or whatever environment that you're in, and just know your worth. If you know you can get something done, then get it done and actually volunteer to do it or say that you'll do it. I'm trying to keep it general to apply it to as many people, but yeah, so many people downplay themselves and it's just not good. You're also hurting the company or the group that you're in. Because if you downplay yourself and you can get something done and that no one else is getting done or that no one else is doing a good job on, you're just hurting the group, right? Whether that's in a school team project or whether that's at your job. If you have to think about how this is not just about yourself, because having an ego is not always just about yourself. It's about how it can affect the people around you.
Yeah, I like what you said about knowing your self-worth. What I'd like to say about that is that I see, like, whenever I'm thinking about my self-worth, it's like I'm watching Tesla on the stock market. It's moving all the time, all day, every second.
Right.
So because there are times we wake up, we feel good, we look good, and we're like, yeah, our self-worth is really high. And then there are other, maybe later that day, something happens and you're down and you have low self-worth. So it's always fluctuating. So just what I'd want to say on that is like, hey, your self-worth is your stock. So go be bullish on your stock.
Right. Exactly. Go be bullish on your stock. I love that. For all of us, it's a roller coaster. Life as a whole is just, like you said, one big stock basically. You go up, you go down, but hopefully, just like stocks over time, you're moving up. You zoom out and you have come from here to here, from down below to up high. And whatever happened in between, that was all growth and that was all part of the journey. But yeah, I think, for example, I see, whenever I say also like know your place is of course like don't be narcissistic basically. Like you were saying, you have that Venn diagram. Don't think that you're just the owner of everything. Don't think that you're the boss, right? We all have our limitations. And it's about knowing those limitations, right? But also by knowing them, I feel like it can also boost your ego because then you know exactly where you're at when it comes to stuff, what level you're at a certain thing. And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that. And look, that doesn't mean, once again, be arguing with people, say that you're the most important in the room, or go and be trying to prove yourself in front of other people. That's narcissism, right? You don't need to go and prove yourself, but it's about just knowing what you're worth, because there are so many people out in this world that have jobs that are doing the job half as good as you could, and they're making twice as much as you are.
Yeah.
But the only reason that they're in that position is because they had an ego. It's because they put themselves out there. It's because they sold themselves and they marketed themselves as someone who could do the job. And maybe they do it good enough to hold the position, but the only reason that you're not above them is because you're not doing what they did to market themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and also I think that an ego is something that's hard to gain and easy to lose. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of sacrifice. If because a lot of ego is attached to your appearance. So sometimes, if you're dressed up, got the suit and tie on, you feel good, your ego is boosted. It's the way you look has so much to do with your ego. So, that's one reason that I push a lot of lifting, running, just being active, because no matter what, if you're active, you are going to start looking better and feeling better. I think that, that's one thing everyone could do to boost their ego.
I agree. I mean, you want to be active. But even if you're not active, right, it's also about self-hygiene, right? You have to, in order to, you always hear the expression, right? You look good, you feel good.
Yeah.
And that's very true. And I mean, I've met few people where they honestly, that saying doesn't apply to them, but I think for most of us it does, right? And so maybe some of us are just lazy when it comes to appearance, that not necessarily that you don't care, but maybe you're lazy and you still feel good whenever you look good, but you don't put in the effort. And I mean, put in that effort, put in that effort. Identify what makes you feel good, what helps you be more confident and perform better at life and what you're doing, and do it. I don't know. I mean, I think it started with a book or maybe a TED Talk, but you also hear that expression of like, make your bed, make your bed in the morning. And it's just a form of saying that wake up and do something that makes you feel good, makes you feel productive, and that sets kind of the standard for the day, right? And by, for example, making your bed, you're setting that standard of like, okay, I woke up, I immediately accomplished something as mundane as making my bed, but that helps. It does a weird thing to psychology, and it helps you feel good about certain things. And yeah, I mean, like I was saying, so self-hygiene, big one. Make yourself clean yourself up, because that'll help your ego and your confidence when you're walking into a room. And then also another thing is go out there and talk to people. This is a big thing that you were saying that you're doing when it comes to your lifting now. You see other people kind of recording themselves in the gym, and you approach them and you ask them for their Instagram, or you ask them like just a little bit about themselves, or you were telling me that people come up to you and they ask you, what's your diet, or anything else. So talk to people. I mean, by networking with people, and it doesn't have to be in a professional environment, just talking to anyone, whether it's at the gym or it's at the park. If you see someone doing something that interests you, if you see someone with a shirt of something that you like, I mean, just go up and talk to people, because people are nicer than I think most people think. And by working on those social skills, you'll really benefit and boost your ego from that.
Yeah, and also I just want to kind of go back to another thing that you said, where you're talking about performance. I know that maybe before you got your LASIK, you're talking about, hey, dude, I just ran a 6:30 on the a mile.
Right. Yes.
And you're like, I'm dead. And I was like, but you feel alpha right now.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I do. And so whenever you go out and you perform, that will boost your ego as well. That's probably, in my opinion, the best way to do it, because if you accomplish something like running a fast mile, you feel strong, you feel alpha. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Work hard, basically, is what that comes down to. Work hard. And you don't have to have like all these crazy goals written out for yourself. Just push yourself in what you're doing. If you're on the treadmill, for example, we've kind of mentioned that I run a lot, if you are on the treadmill, first of all, don't compare yourself to everyone else on the treadmill. You know, don't try to downplay what you're doing. Just look at what you're doing. Say, okay, normally I run a 9-minute mile. You know, today, whenever I'm really pushing myself, the fastest I've ever run is like an 8:40. Just try to push yourself to do an 8:30. You know, you've been doing this with your miles, where Josh has basically been pursuing a sub 6-minute mile, and so every day, you know, there'd be days where he'd shave off a second or shave off 2 seconds off of the previous day's mile. And that's what I think he's kind of making a point of, is like, he felt strong, he felt alpha, he felt good after that, right? Because even if it's just a second off your time, or a second or 2 seconds off your time, you're working hard and you're pushing yourself. And that's like a new little thing that you're hitting, right? You don't have this big goal of, you don't necessarily have to have this big goal of like, by the end of week 1, I'm going to shave off 10 seconds. By the end of week 2, you don't have to, for certain things, you don't have to structure them that way. You just go out, you push yourself hard. And honestly, sometimes it feels even better when you surprise yourself, because it's like a whole extra feeling of feeling strong, of feeling good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, that's how I see it.
I agree. Yeah. And yeah, and I would also just add, like, just try to do something you've never done before. You know, whether that's running an 8.5-minute mile, whether that's even just running a mile. Like, just go do something that you haven't done, and surprise yourself. You know, you feel good, and also I have a theory that, you know, we're all just way stronger, we're way faster, we're way smarter than what we think we really are, because we're always comparing ourselves to someone that we see on Instagram or on YouTube, and some of these people are the best at what they do. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I'm not as good as them, but it's like, you're still really good.
Exactly. You know, and that's my whole point is, you don't have to compare yourself to people to make yourself feel better. If anything, that'll make you feel worse. Yeah. You know, because like Josh said, you know, I felt great after running a 6.5-minute mile outside. You know, I felt like that was, because that was probably the fastest I had run a mile outside in a long time, right? Not all time, because I used to do track, and I would run slightly faster at that time, but in a long time. And, you know, I know that there's guys out there that can run a 4-minute mile, but I don't care, you know, because it's also, for example, one of the reasons I don't care, and I tell myself this, is sometimes some stuff also comes down to genetics, right? Like, if you're tall and have long legs, it's just gonna be, that doesn't mean I can't run a 4-minute mile, but that may just mean that it's a little bit easier for them to run that 4-minute mile. And that doesn't take away from what they're doing, right? Because they're as dead running that 4-minute mile as I was running my 6.5-minute mile. So I don't mean to downplay what they're doing. I just don't want to downplay what I'm doing. Yeah. And I think that's important, is, you know, don't criticize other people, but also don't try to compare yourself and criticize yourself so harshly that it doesn't help you feel good about what you are, you know, because you can easily spin that and say, oh man, I can only run a 6.5-minute mile. I'm slow. You know, my friend ran a 5:45 and I can only run a 6.5. No, you know, you don't got to look at it that way. I looked at it as, man, I haven't ran a sub 7-minute mile in years. It's like, I feel fucking good about what I'm doing. Yes. And so you know, comparison is the thief of joy, and just don't do it. There's things that I feel like you can do it, but you have to look at it in a certain way that sometimes can be a slippery slope, and that people don't manage to tread across. So, and what I mean by that is basically, you can look at someone and say, I want to be able to do what they do, right? Like, this dude does this is going to be my final goal. Is like, for example, once again with the running, that guy runs a 6-minute mile. I want to be able to run a mile like that guy. I want to be able to run 6 minutes, and you can use them as inspiration. Yeah. But don't use them in a negative way. I think when you're using someone as inspiration, or something as inspiration, that's positive. When you're using someone as comparison and to downplay yourself, that's negative. Yeah, that's a powerful point. I think that there's that duality of reality. You know, they can be as inspirational as this person may be, or object or thing. They are the equal and opposite exist of how much it could also put you down. You know, you can be comparing yourself, or you can be inspired by that. And there's like this equal and opposite effect, like which
part of the spectrum are you at? You know, like try to position yourself on the inspiration side. It takes energy to do that. It takes a lot of you know, sometimes, and there are times when it's like, hey, like I realistically cannot do this. So then, you know, it's just like, hey, then now that you recognize that, go find something that is inspirational that you can achieve.
Exactly. You know, and this applies to everything. And I just kind of want to keep extending the example so that we're not just talking about fitness. But for example, I have a guy who was part of my capstone project during the final year of, during my senior year at the University of Oklahoma for my bachelor's. So, you know, we were in this engineering group for an aerospace competition, and this guy is going to go be a pilot, right? He's going to go be a fighter pilot, hopefully. But he was already told he's going to be flying F-18s and, you know, moving up to F-35s if everything goes as planned. But he would tell us that when it comes to, for example, the Air Force, so he was in a program called ROTC, or it stands, it's, you know, it's an acronym, but ROTC, I'm sure, you know, if you've been to college, then you know what I'm talking about. But it's basically a program where people who want to go into the military, into some sort of branch, they can pursue their degree while working towards that at the university. And then once they get out of the university, I think they're automatically boosted up to a certain level. But basically, you know, he was telling us that a lot of people want to be fighter pilots, but that some people, that there's so many requirements that a lot of people are not able to become fighter pilots, not because their ability is lacking, but simply because they don't meet basic requirements. Like one of them being height. You can be only a maximum of a certain height and a minimum, right? So you can be too short, but you can also be too tall, because some cockpits will just simply not they just simply don't have the leg room for you to be a pilot in that. And, you know, and the taller you are, yes, there's certain aircraft that they can put you in, because then there's certain aircraft that have more leg room, but then there's also a limit. I mean, I think, you know, and I could be completely wrong here, but if you're like 7 foot, you're not going to be any sort of pilot. And at least for 90%, 95% of the aircraft out there. And if you're, you know, 5 feet or under, you're probably definitely not going to be a pilot of any sort in any aircraft. So, but that has nothing to do with anything that you could control, and that's nothing that you should feel bad or ashamed about, because there is going to be something out there that suits your skills that you're going to be able to excel at.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a good example. I think that, you know, we can continue on this topic in the sense that, you know, finding something that you are good at and that you like to do, that, you know, for me now is like this production, you know, building a studio. Creating educational reels, you know, that's something that I found that I'm not quite yet good at, but I'm able to now use social media and you know, Instagram as, rather than comparing myself to these people, which I have, you know, I'm guilty of in the past. Now I'm finding inspiration from these people, and I'm like, wow, you know, trying to learn tips on how to record, how to edit. And whenever I tap into that inspiration, that's when I'm learning. That's when I'm growing. That's when my content's getting better.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So I think that's a good point. You know, shifting over to that is, my piece of advice is get a hobby. Find a hobby. Kind of on the other side of that is, I know a lot of people who don't have really any good hobbies, and basically live their lives at work. Mm-hmm. For example, I know someone, and I know their parent, and their mom will take vacation, will take time off from work. Let's say, and it won't even be that long. Let's say she takes 3 days off, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like that. And it's not for a particular vacation. She just wants some time off from work because she's tired of it. Multiple times by day 2 or 3, she'll be tired of it. She'll like want to go back to work because she's bored and doesn't know what to do with herself at home. Yeah. And I've heard it directly from the source. So I'm not making it up. It's not something I've observed. It's like I've heard it directly from the source. Like, she gets bored, she wants to go back to work, even though she took vacation days because she wanted to be away from work. And that's simply a product of, or I mean, it can be many reasons, but one of the main reasons is that she doesn't have a hobby. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have a good hobby that she enjoys spending her time in, that she can do outside of work. I feel very thankful that I've found hobbies that I can sink my time into in that I could work, 20 hours a week and still not want to go back to work and go try to find some time to kill. And that can be anything from gaming, exercise, and then obviously, of course, just simply having friends that you can go and talk to.
Yeah. Making exercise your hobby, that is such a mindset that I encourage everyone to do. Which is why personally for me, I try to just like my goals when I go to the gym, make sure I have fun, because that way it's my hobby. It's not my chore. I don't have to, okay, today I have to do 3 sets of 10 on the squat rack. I need to do the bench press. I need, so now that when I choose to make it my hobby, I have fun and I go back. I keep going back. Because it's so easy for a hobby to turn into a chore.
It is.
So keeping that joy in there, keeping the fun and the excitement, that's what keeps us going.
Yes.
And that's what, if we can tap into it, that's when we can learn and grow, and just make the most out of life.
I agree. I mean, you know, that's a very good point. You want to find hobbies, and sometimes, something that can help with that is finding multiple hobbies, but you want to find hobbies and do them in a way that they don't turn into a chore. I mean, Josh is completely right on that. If you do something, for example, I love to game, and I've currently been trying to stream. I've mentioned that, and I won't go into details right now about it, but something I was telling Josh right before we were recording this episode was that I was struggling to do longer streams because I like to take a break. Usually I would game for, let's say, a maximum of 2 hours, then I would like to take a break. I see all these streamers that stream 6 to 8 hours, and I'm like, man, 6 to 8 hours. I love to game, but I don't even think taking breaks, I game, 6 to 8 hours a day. I don't think I ever have. And even if I have maybe done 5-6 hours, it was with friends and I was playing with people, and it was more about trying to be social with them, and because, I couldn't see them otherwise. But yeah, that's something that I struggle with because I don't want my gaming to feel like a chore. I don't want to, and I'm not complaining that it's hard work, because it's not, but of course we all get bored, right? I mean, even, for all of those of you that do have hobbies, you watch a show, if you watch a whole season in one day, you're probably not going to want to keep watching the next season, the second part of the day. You just get tired of it. You just get bored. I mean, or you're reading a book, right? You read 100 pages in one day maybe, or whatever your limit is. You want to switch it up. Yeah. I mean, you want to switch it up. Same thing for me. So, I'm very blessed that I have the time to be able to even consider streaming and just be able to game. But I also want people to understand that the only reason it's a struggle is just because you get bored. So, and then the more you stream, if you do it too often, I don't want it to feel like a chore or like a job. So I agree. I think that's very important. I kind of wanted to shift it completely a little bit. Because we're talking about not feeling like a chore and not feeling like a job, and something that came to mind due to some discussions that we've had is also like relationships.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk about relationships, whether that's romantic or with friends as well. I mean, what brought it into mind is that some people, and we're not like this, but some people I've heard chase that excitement of a new relationship a lot.
Yeah.
They'll chase of a romantic relationship. They'll chase that excitement of like their first kiss with someone or their first date with someone, and so they have trouble settling down because then they feel like once they commit to someone and they're trying to improve themselves and they're trying to stay loyal and dedicate the time to spend with that significant other, it feels like a chore to them.
Yeah, that's a good segue, and I can kind of tie this back to what we're talking about with ego and confidence. A lot of times when someone is in a rush to get into a relationship, because they lack a lot of confidence, and they think that, hey, this person is willing to talk to me and like me, and that gives them some sense of confidence, so they cling to it.
Right.
So for some people, there's a dependency, like I need you to feel well about myself.
So you're saying that they have a confidence meter that they essentially feed by finding more and more and newer and newer people to like them.
Right.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah. And, everybody's different. Some people are able to, attract more partners or potential relationships than others. So there's always like that varying degree of just the magnitude of impact that someone else has on them.
I agree. Do you feel like, let's say the podcast took off, or let's say the Instagram account took off, do you feel worried that, or that you would become one of those people that are kind of paranoid that the other person, that the people hitting them up, for example, for romantic reasons, are going to be only hitting you up because of who you are and your status?
That's a really good question. I guess, if I think if anybody's being honest, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that is always, I've never been in a position of like an influencer or any of that, but I would imagine that it's lonely at the top.
Right. Yeah.
Of
course.
Because when you're up there, you probably have to work your butt off to get up there. And when you work hard to get something, you probably also receive like a lot of envy and jealousy too.
And it must be hard to want to share that as well. Right? I mean, it's hard to want to share with anyone, and if someone is hitting you up for romantic reasons, first of all, I hear of a lot of people being paranoid, right? That they're just gold diggers or whatever they may be, attention seekers, right? They're only hitting the person up because of their status, of who they are. But even when you find the right person, I'm sure, and that they're with you just simply because they like who you are, and they would like you whether you had those accounts or that fame or whoever you are, whether you had that or not. It's also hard to want to share whatever you've accomplished with that person, right?
Yeah.
Not even talking about fame or status, but let's say you build a successful career and you have, maybe you're not famous or have a big status, but you have a lot of money or something, right? I mean, it must be hard to find a new person and then want to share that with. Maybe if you find the right person, it's not. But I guess I'm just coming at it from like you're kind of careful and you question whether it's going to be worth it with someone.
Yeah, I know that. With me, if I'm looking at any type of potential partner, I'm super picky and I'm like thoroughly vetting these people like for their values and their morals and their ethics. And that's something that you learn about someone else over time. Someone can say like, hey, I value honesty. It's like, okay, well, I need to see it. It's going to take time for me to actually understand that that's really what you value.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for example, trust.
Mm-hmm.
You can say you value trust, but you have to actually earn that trust, right? And one of the ways is, for example, trust in others, and they'll have reason to trust in you.
Right.
I heard that recently, and it's true. Honesty, show that you're honest.
Mm-hmm.
Prove that you're honest, and it doesn't have to be something that you're actively proving. It's just something that happens over time, right? With little things, with big things, and so I agree. It's funny you say that you thoroughly vet people, because my girlfriend looked me up on the local sheriff's department website, county thing, whatever. I don't even know what it is. But she looked me up just to see if I had a record. So that's something that she vetted me with. Is she looked me up. She was like, okay, well, I want to know
credit score.
Yeah, no, credit score. I don't know about credit score, maybe, but I don't even think I had a credit score when I met her. But yeah, she told me, she was like, yeah, I looked you up. I need to make sure you weren't a rapist or you weren't an abuser or something. I needed to make sure. She's like, if it helps you feel any better, I looked up my whole family too. But yeah. I mean, maybe you don't need to vet them like that, or maybe you do. Who knows in today's world? But yeah, that's funny that you say that. But we all vet people and kind of look for certain things in our own way.
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of confidence and ego, if you do find the right person, that's a big source of that as well. Because, and I think that if I do choose some type of partner, that should boost their ego, because it's like, hey, you've been thoroughly vetted.
You've been thoroughly vetted,
right? Yeah, you've passed the rounds of interviews.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that leads into standards as well. I mean, I think it's so important to have a standard of, and this applies to friends, but also relationships. It's like, because one time you asked me, I think we were having a conversation about like what you look for in a friend, and I mentioned lots of things like somewhat intelligence, trust, just someone I can joke around with. But yeah, I mean, I think having standards is very important. And I don't think people should feel bad about having standards. And this kind of leads to also, this kind of, I think, goes along with the ego thing in some sort of way. But sometimes people will say, you have too high of a standard. Maybe someone will look at you and will see that you'll tell them about your standards for a romantic partner. And they'll say, well, you have too high of a standard. Try lowering your standards a little bit. You're trying to get this unicorn of a partner that just doesn't exist. And it's like, look, maybe the standards are too high for you, but they're not too high for me.
Yeah.
They're too high for you. And that's okay. But don't tell me that they're too high for me, because I know what I want and I know what I deserve. Mm-hmm. And that goes into what you're saying of, if you have high standards and they know you had high standards for the partner that you were choosing, that should boost their ego, because it's like they met those standards. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's why partnerships, relationships, that's another good way to build your confidence, boost your ego, because I know when I'm seeing Ricardo, I'm telling him like, bro, you look good today.
Yeah, me too, bro.
You look fit.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the LASIK, bro. The guy's a straight killer.
I don't know about a straight killer. Maybe I'm more of a
ice in the veins.
Ice in the veins. More like lukewarm water in the veins. Yeah, I don't know about killer. Maybe more of like
Here we are talking about confidence and ego.
Oh, that's right. No, I am a fucking killer, dude. I kind of completely slipped my mind what we're talking about here. No, hey, bad example. Cut that out. I'm a fucking killer. Yeah. You hear that?
Let's go.
Yeah, and my boy here is, if I'm a killer, he's a serial killer. Look at this dude. Look at this dude shredded. No, but yeah, don't be afraid to be a little,
to show love for your brother.
To show love for your brother, to show love for, your friends, for everyone, because that, I think, just having, going back to having a good network, like build those relationships with people, and you're gonna, and surround yourself with people that are a good influence, that are doing good things, that are not just like-minded, but that push you too to do things. I know that I mentioned looking for something in a friend. I'm like, when I look for, one of the things I said, I remember telling you, is I want to be friends with people that I can learn something new with. That we can share knowledge of what we do. We can share different things. That's why I'm saying, not just like-minded people, but people that you can learn stuff from. Like whenever I saw you, man, I knew, I was like, this guy is driven. This guy's intelligent. He knows what he wants. He's a beast in the gym. I want to be friends with someone who inspires me to want to be those things as well, and even if I'm already those things in my head, like that shares the same energy.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely there are a lot of points in our vibes that we give off, that where our amplitudes are hitting, constructive feedback, and we're building each other up.
Yes.
And that's where we're in sync.
Yep.
And that's whenever things really happen. And the relationship I have with you is something that I cherish and that I value, and that I see us going places and being successful and doing things together.
Same here.
Of
course, yeah, man. I see you. I see success. So that's why I've tried to start stuff up with you, is because I know that we can do something great.
Right.
And so find for the audience, find your Josh. Okay, find your Josh. But
yeah, or your Ricardo.
Yeah, of course. I think that's a kind of a great note to end it on, don't you think?
Yeah. I think this was a good episode. We're going to continue to do this, and we're just going to kind of just be open and free about our conversation. We want to capture as much real, organic dialogue that Ricardo and I have, because there might be something that someone can take away from it.
Right, these conversations are very raw. I mean, they're us just sitting down. Most of the time, they just start off with us showing up to the studio, talking to each other. We strike up a conversation about something. We say, you know what, let's go with that. Let's halt the conversation, turn on the camera, let's talk. And I feel like that's the best way for us to do it. And I think that's the best way for us to keep it real and hopefully earn your guys' trust and earn your guys' following, because maybe you can see that, you know, we're genuine in what we say and we live what we talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you guys like talking about engineering, tech, life, then let's start a community and let's have a conversation.
Yes, please contact us. I think I'm going to start putting our emails, our podcast email in the description. So please check out the description, at least starting from this one. I don't remember if I did it for the last, but starting from this one, if you're a small-time content creator, you want to connect with us, you want to do stuff with us, please let us know. If you're just a fan, you're watching, you don't do anything on your own, but you want us to discuss a certain topic, or you have a certain story to tell us that maybe we can learn, you know, from, because there are so many of you out there that are incredible that we could learn and take away things from. So, you know, tell us that. Don't be afraid to do it. Tell us your struggle with ego building. But yeah, you know, email us. Follow us on all of our socials. Those will be linked in the description as well. But yeah, I think that, look forward to the next episode. We're going to be doing these every 2 weeks. So just stay tuned.
Let's go.
All right. See you guys later.